Welcome back to the Dare to Dream podcast, where we give you an honest and unfiltered look to what it's like to follow your dreams and search for what sets your soul on fire. So we're really excited today. We have a special episode for you guys. We are bringing on our first guest. And so our guest's name is Timothyjohn. He is a storyteller. He is my business partner for Epoch Academy. He's a social entrepreneur, and he's an all-around great guy who is super interesting to talk to.
Yeah, that's right. This is my first time meeting Tim, and he's an absolute legend. Couldn't be more excited to show you guys what he showed us. So let's get this thing started. John, how we feeling, boys? What have we been doing?
One thing to note is that we wanted to start the podcast at 12. That was what we were planning on, and we just had technical difficulty one after another.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway for us is that you have a plan and then you try and implement that plan and it's going to fall apart. We had a broken microphone. We had the wrong USB connector. We had pure inadequacy on it for me in terms of being able to use the computer. And it just really goes to show that when you try something new, you're going to have that struggle, that growth period where you get frustrated. But when you're frustrated, it means that you are growing.
Big time. We've been laughing, been having a good time, and we made it work. So it's thing on the road.
And so we're really excited in this episode. This is going to be our first episode with a guest. And so we're bringing you Timothyjohn. Timothyjohn is an amazing storyteller. He's a performing artist. He's an all-around great guy. But most of all, he is my business partner. We just founded a nonprofit together. And he's just an inspiring person who is daring to dream in many aspects of his life. And so he'll tell a little bit more of his story, but recently graduated from Rice, and he's made some big decisions to choose what he's passionate about over what society is telling him to do. So we'll turn it over to you, Timothy. Great to have you here, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And despite all the struggles of getting it going, like we're still getting it going, and we're gonna give it our all. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, just like give us a little bit of your background. Like as I mentioned, you obviously just graduated, and what you're up to now.
Yeah. So I'm from San Diego, California. Born and raised in one of the greatest cities. Then I went all the way out to Houston on a full ride basketball scholarship to Rice University. There I was the president of the Black Male Leadership Initiative. I got involved with this leadership institute called the Door Institute, where I received executive coaching, and then just did a whole bunch of stuff in the community while I was a student athlete. I pride myself in trying to do a lot at once and see how much I can take on. And since then, graduation, I had big plans of traveling the world, sort of like Vinny. I'd saved up, I had all mapped out, and then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I was like, okay, all these things that I had planned on for all this time are no longer a possibility. And so that took a while, to be honest, to like not recover from that, but like I was definitely shaken up. I was like, okay, what am I doing? I got this online class. Like I was like not motivated. I didn't log in for like 3 weeks, to be honest. But then I started focusing on, okay, what new opportunities present themselves instead of what was taken away. Mm-hmm. And so I always had this dream of creating like a center where you can go and get your whole self developed, right? And then obviously that's evolved into the nonprofit that we're working on right now. But so yeah, since then I've been doing that and going full in. I just got certified as a coach, as a sort of like life leadership coach, and then I'm working on monetizing some of my other passions like speaking and whatnot. So that's where I'm at right now.
It's incredible, man. Great story, and something I've been curious about. You're 22 years old, right? And have you always had this kind of like this drive and passion just to give like, yourself to everything you're doing? And have you always just been somebody who's dabbled in a bunch of different stuff and kind of, taken on a lot of responsibility like that?
I think I've always had a lot of like drive. Like I remember the other day I was cleaning out my room and I found a mission statement I made when I was like 11 or 12. And it was just always important for me to articulate what it is that I believe, what it is I stand for. Because it's easy to forget because the world will tell you you're this. The world will tell you you're that. But you get to decide who you are and stay true to that. So I've always had that. But as far as like actually going out and doing it, it's more of a recent thing. It wasn't until I was in college where I had an opportunity. I was involved with this organization called the Black Male Leadership Initiative. But I was just kind of a member. I would show up every now and then because they would give us canes and it was free, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm a student athlete. I got all this time already taken up. But then I decided, you know what? I'm gonna go a little bit harder on it. I'm gonna like get to know these people. I'm gonna try to do that. And then this guy, one of my mentors, his name is William Edmond. One time he was like, hey man, someone just left the organization. We need someone to help with this event. And he was like, yeah, how about you do it? Like, you've been showing more. And I did it. And when I was taking on that more responsibility, one, not only did I found is I had more time, it made me take my time more seriously. So I was actually more effective in everything I was doing because I had to be. And then the event ended up going very well. And I was like, hey, I kind of like this thing. I kind of like organizing an event. I kind of like getting to stay the vision behind it. And then I ended up getting more involved, and that spilled into the things I'm doing now. So it wasn't until I was someone gave me an opportunity to kind of push me into it. And then I was like, hey, this is okay. I can actually do this. And I feel like that's continually happening right now. Starting a business, and I know chasing your dream is like, it's something where you really have to take that leap. And at first it's a struggle, but then you're like, hey, okay, what else can I do? Okay, hey, what else can I do?
Totally.
This is coming from a guy, though. I've been to Tim's house, and I've seen he has a picture of what you wrote it on your door when you were 9.
Oh, yeah.
You wrote your creed, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember it, but essentially
Please recite your creed.
as a 9-year-old, Timothyjohn wrote like things that I would tell myself today about striving to reach your full potential, being the best version of yourself. And I don't know about you, Vinny, but when I was 9 years old, I was focused on a little bit of a different.
I think I was eating glue out of a sandbox or something.
Good times.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And something that me and Greg have been talking about a lot, and like we're just learning more and more, is taking that first step and how important that is to just get the wheels in motion. Like when you look at a big picture at a new project, like I'm sure like EPOG, your guys' nonprofit, when you see it as like, I'm starting a business, it could be so daunting just to dive in and stuff like that. But to start small with it, like a detail, just get the wheels in motion basically, and you can be amazed. But just starting with little things, how just things start falling into place, and it can really just take you so far by kind of having that mentality. And just whatever you're doing, it can be applied to everything. Starting small, and it could really just let things happen, and try not to get so paranoid and look at the big picture, and analysis paralysis is what we kind of call it. But I think that's just like helped me out so much, just kind of diving into this whole new lifestyle and starting a business pretty much.
Yeah.
That's the thing I really, really respect about. I mean, I respect a lot about you, but that's been the biggest draw of me wanting to spend time with you and work with you and create with you, is you are such a big thinker and such a visionary that you have this grand idea in your head, and there's nothing out there that's going to stop you. And so for me, it's really easy for me to focus on the details and get hung up on the little things. But when we're working on big ideas for EPOG, it's like, we're doing this. We're going to figure out a way to get there. We're going to figure out who's going to build X, Y, and Z. And I also really like how much thought you put into different aspects of your story. As I mentioned before, you identify as a storyteller, which I've seen you tell stories. I've seen you perform live. It's all incredible. But I really like the intricate thinking, the thinking you put into the intricate details. And so like one thing you've been talking about recently is how you are starting to associate your brand with certain things. Like, tell us a little bit about the shirt you're wearing and kind of what that means to you.
Yeah, it's more of a subtle thing, but I like to just, sometimes I think a lot of people can relate to feeling alienated, and feeling like you're isolated. And especially I think in coronavirus times, like when everyone's quarantined and away, and then just the way our society is, it's more divisive than ever, and so individuals, I think, feel like it's harder to find your place in this. And I think that it speaks to a lot of different people. And plus, I think just space is something that's like awesome to explore, and there's mystery in it and stuff like that. And so I've always been, even as a little kid, I've always been like the one who was nerdy looking at YouTube videos about what's out there in space and what kind of planets there are. And so this is just about me bringing that childhood aspect of curiosity, exploration, but then also those feelings of sometimes feeling isolated.
And so for those of you who might be listening instead of watching, Tim's wearing a purple tie-dye shirt, but it has a alien symbol on it, and that was like your identifying as it's almost making it okay to feel alienated at times, and that what makes you different can make you powerful. What makes you different can be your superpower almost.
Yeah, I like that perspective. Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, something that you were saying earlier, though. One, I appreciate all the compliments, but I wanted to speak to something that you were saying about how we work together and we have different styles. You were saying you get caught up in the weeds and I'm the big picture. But what I'm learning now is that everyone just has a different style and different traits. It's not that there's strengths and weaknesses. It's just traits that make up who you are. and those traits have positive aspects and then aspects that could be detrimental, and it's about learning what those are, and it's about how do you capitalize that, and how do you surround yourself with people who can see your blind spot. So for me, I'm big picture, big idea, yeah, let's go do this, but sometimes I'll run over some pitfalls that are important to know. And so you need people who are more in the weeds and the details to be like, okay, hey, we're going to take over the world, but what are we going to do about this, right? And at the same time, what you were saying you appreciated was like, sometimes you're here right here and not seeing the big picture, and that's where I think I shine right there. And so it's been awesome having both of those perspectives, and then also all the other people who have contributed to building Epoch with us has been like helped us make it to where we are now and where we're heading.
Yeah, and so one more question I have for you is just, you're doing very big things, very unusual things for a 22-year-old who just graduated college.
Attempting big things, but yeah.
You're doing them, man. You're doing them. And I just wanted to ask you, especially in the theme of daring to dream, what are some of the big things? Obviously, the nonprofit, starting that is huge, and that's a big proponent of what you're daring to dream in. But what are some other avenues of your life that you're taking a path less traveled, and you're doing something that takes a lot of courage?
I think honestly, one of the most courageous things that you could do is be yourself. In a world that tries to put you in a box, in a world that tries to tell you, you can't say certain things, you can't do anything, it's just be authentically yourself. But then at the same time, being authentically yourself doesn't mean that you just are one way. And I think a lot of times people will put themselves in a box in the name of authenticity. It's about, I think that people are constantly changing, constantly waning up and down. You know what I mean? Like how we were coming in, we were frustrated. Putting this light here, we closed the door, it got hot, and we started sweating. And that's how we were. But that's authentic in that, but then also staying authentic to the optimistic aspects of our nature. Like, no, we're still going to get it, even when it's hard. But being honest when you're hurting, being honest when you struggle with something. And especially as young men, I think in 25, we're supposed to have it all together. We're supposed to be like on that right trajectory, and all three of us taking a path that's like off that. A lot of times people are like, whoa, hey, what are you doing? And then at the same time, there's a level of respect in that too. And I think that because secretly everyone wants to do things their way, and secretly everyone, well, not everyone, maybe it's not for everyone, but I think a lot of people have thought about, man, like, I wonder if I pursue that thing that I was really passionate about when I was younger. And we decided that we weren't going to ever ask ourselves that question.
Exactly. Taking the leap of faith and really throwing yourself into something unknown, and ultimately it is about being your most authentic self. And that's like that's opened the floodgates basically for me. Like when I left my last job and pretty much put my full time into writing, it's like, wow, I've never even gotten like this close to knowing this part of myself. Like when I started writing, it was kind of just like a snowball effect. I was writing about what I was going through, the experience, being as vulnerable as possible, and that's just like kind of snowball just keeps going, and I feel like I could be my best self, and that's my most authentic self. But the question I have for you is kind of, do you ever feel like there's pressure to be that person that's different, or that's not almost fitting in? Is the pressure to be that authentic person that's like just a leader and doing all this like courageous stuff? Do you ever feel like you want to just like disappear for a little bit?
That's very interesting you bring that up, because like pretty much my whole life I was like that. So obviously you guys can't tell, they can't tell because I'm sitting down. I'm 6'8", right? And I'm dark skinned, and I'm a lot taller than all of my family members, even in my own family. So I stand out. When we're walking together, like, okay, one of them is different than the rest, right? And so like, even since a young age, people could tell I was tall for my age, and I would get looks all the time. At like 11 or 12, 13, anywhere we went, oh, hey, do you play basketball? And I would get all this attention, and like, I'm just like an insecure, like 13-year-old kid at the time, and I wouldn't like all that attention. And sometimes I wish I could just blend in, right? I was the only African American. A lot of my schools, like I went to private schools growing up, and I knew that there was obvious things about me that made me different, right? And so I used to fight that, and I used to not want that attention. But then I learned, hey, I can't avoid it. So how could I change how I'm thinking about this? At first I was thinking that, oh, they're looking at me because I'm different, or I was using it as an opportunity to think about how I'm isolated or how I don't fit in, rather than thinking about how, like, if I embrace who I am, then that's a positive, right? And so started to, one funny thing I actually used to do is when people would look at me, I would start to think, oh, they think I'm attractive, they think I'm handsome, they think I'm cute, right? Because I would never know, right? But I would tell myself that, and I responded differently. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah,
Puffing your chest.
yeah,
out.
a little bit,
Good.
you know, whatever chest I had,
There
but yeah. So yeah, one thing I want to flip it back on you though. I know you were talking about writing and how you use it as a self-expression tool. Like, how did you find writing?
So, funny enough, give you a synopsis of my kind of story. So in high school, I was in high school broadcasting,
Yeah.
and I was in the journalism class, but never wrote a story through all of high school. I just like stuck to the broadcasting, and I had a good time doing it. It was fun, so I'm just like, I'll be a journalism major in college. Didn't know what else to do, and did journalism in college. I hated it the whole time. I'm just like, this is not what I want to do. I hated interviewing people, and I just realized, I was like, I definitely don't want to be a news reporter. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. And so after college, I'm like, damn, I just spent like 4 years dedicated to this major and this whole life that I just don't really enjoy. But I was learning the like skills to write and putting together stories. And after college, just had a couple different jobs, just like working at clothing stores and interior design. And I just started writing on Medium, like I've talked about in the past, and just started like writing about what I was going through and being vulnerable and just questioning like what am I supposed to do. And I also found that after I go on trips and like on trips, I really enjoyed writing about those trips, the travel writing. Like, wow, like if I could do this, like this would be like, this is what I want to do with my life.
What about that writing though? What about that is what makes you feel like you come alive?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just love the creative aspect of it. Just in journalism, I felt like it wasn't very creative. It was just writing a story about a person, current events and stuff, and I wanted nothing to do with that. But then I started just describing like my travel experiences and the look of a place, the smell of a place, just like the feel of being there. I just love to capture that essence of like a new city. And I love more than anything just to be in a new city and just like cruising around with my camera, snapping pictures of people and just the culture and just kind of trying to capture that vibe. And I found just like so much joy in writing about that. And then, so my plan was to go to Japan and teach English and then do travel writing on the side, but that would be like my main focus. And so, yeah, like you were saying, when coronavirus happened, it's just like, damn, well, that's not happening now. Like, it's going to be at least another year and a half or whatever. And so just refocusing basically the whole, trajectory right now and what we're doing. But
do you feel like when this really takes off and then things open for travel, do you think that you would consider doing this, or would it be harder? Yeah, what would win in that battle if you had to choose?
I think it's all going to kind of blend together. It's definitely something I'm thinking about, but I just started pursuing a master's degree in nonfiction creative writing, and hopefully get that down in like a year or two. That's what I'm aiming for. So I think that's just to keep getting better at writing, and that will only benefit like travel writing and just everything I want to do. But I think it's all going to kind of just work together. Like I know I'm going to want to be traveling the world a lot, and this brand is all about daring to dream, and that's my dream. And to be able to work those in together and keep this up, and while also travel writing, and just it's honestly just about writing and living the experience. Like I've said that I don't live to write, I write to better understand living. That's like kind of what I live my life by, because like writing is what I love, but why I love it is because it's an expression of life, and I find like just so much joy and the beauty of every day and really living and spending time with my best friends. And so I love writing about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Long-winded, but
what about you?
Let me. I just want to say one thing on that real quick, is that what I think is interesting is you talk about how you studied journalism and you were doing all these classes and learning these skills of interviewing people that you didn't really enjoy, and you didn't really know if you were going to utilize them. And so when you graduated, you felt like, damn, I just not wasted, but I didn't spend 4 years learning what I was supposed to do maybe. But now you realize that when you do find what you're really passionate about, that it was directly correlated to the journalism, and that was like, those were the steps giving you the tools in order to become who you needed to become. And that just is really resonating with me because I just wrote an article the other day about how, for me, I was using personal development as a coping mechanism almost for working jobs that I didn't like. I was working an entry-level job when I first graduated college, and I had so much energy and ambition and drive, and I wanted to just put that into my job, put a dent in the universe, and actually like make people's lives better. And I wasn't able to do that there, so I figured that I could change myself faster than I could change my job. And so I took all that energy and I put it back into myself, and I started reading, writing, meditating, really working on myself. And now that I'm here 3.5 years later and I quit my job to start a personal development company with you, Tim, it's just crazy that I was searching for my passion and my purpose the whole time, and yet it was right there in front of me. It was what I was doing every day when I had free time. And so that's what I think is a big takeaway for people listening is think about what you do in your free time. Like when you get up in the morning on a Saturday and you have time to just spend on your own, like what is it that you're doing? What are the things that really make you feel alive and full of energy? And think about how you can turn that into more of a way of living than just focusing on, what's going to make me the most money at first.
Yeah, I think it was something that's key that you said there was you were already doing the things that you feel like were your purpose. And I really think that, I don't know why we do it this way, but we use the language, you got to find your purpose. And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. I think that a useful way to think about it is you decide to live on purpose. Everyone's born. No one asked to be born. But at some point, you got to make a decision like, okay, I'm going to live on purpose. And what that means is I'm going to strive to do the best that I can and make an impact, right? And once you do that, you'll realize that you treat the things that you're already doing differently. And then you'll discover like, oh, wait, writing is a tool to inspire people because I want to reach my full potential, and that's inspiring. So now when I write, this can actually be helpful for someone else, right? And then so you develop it, right? And then you discover your destiny. It's like you decide, you develop, and then you discover your destiny. Because once you develop it, now you're at a point where you have mastery. Then now you can discover your destiny. Now opportunities open up because you've crafted a skill of value.
Totally. And I completely agree that, I think everything happens for a reason. And like I said before, like I thought that journalism was like, I just wasted 4 years of my life doing this. But 100% knows for a reason. And everything we do is just a stepping stone and just taking it kind of a day by day and focusing on what you're doing now. And that's all you really got to do. Just focus on today. Like I'm a big proponent of like every day is to be utilized and every day is beautiful. And yeah, I kind of think about what you're doing and everything's a stepping stone to kind of the next best thing.
And once you just, even if it's the wrong decision, once you decide to do something and put yourself out there and start honing those skills, and you start becoming more authentic and honest about what you like, that's when the world just opens up. That's how I met you. I would never have met you if I wasn't in an online class that required me to post my mission and my life purpose and what I wanted to do to a group of strangers on Facebook. That took a lot of courage on my part, and that's how we ultimately got connected. And as soon as you are honest and authentic about who you are, what you want to do, what you enjoy doing, and the people you want to be around, it's like the universe or some force starts conspiring to just bring these opportunities and open these doors in your life. And that's what I think has been the biggest eye-opener for me.
Yeah, and I know a lot of times we like thinking of things in terms of like a destiny and God and all that, but also studying psychology, I realize it's true on a lot of different levels. Like we have this part of our brain called the reticular activator system, and it's the reason why when you drive your car around, you see different models of your car like all the time. Like when you first get your car, it's not that as soon as you got that car, everyone else started getting the car. It's that now it's relevant to you because you're seeing it every day. You need to find it in a parking lot. So what happens is when you think about your purpose and you think about those things, that same mechanism in your brain now identifies things that are going to help you. That's why setting goals is so effective, because you tell yourself and your subconscious, hey, this is what's important to me. And so it starts to find resources, and then you'll think about, oh, wait, I already know someone who's doing this. Let me hit them up, right? Or it's like, okay, my goal is to then be healthy. Now I'm driving around, oh, I'm hungry, and I see the junk food spot I used to go to. I'm like, nah, because your brain is now tuned. That's not going to help you to your goals. So it's actually very practical, and it's even scientifically backed to like the best thing to do is to set your goals and set a high vision, because then you're going to tune your brain to the highest thing possible. Like, why would you not do that?
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. Something like goal setting, I was kind of telling you about this earlier. It hasn't always been my strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
I think partially because I was scared before to think about that big of a picture.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared even to look like a year in the future. I'm like, I'm not loving what I'm doing right now. I can't even imagine what I'm probably gonna do the same thing.
Yeah.
But once I like started asking myself the hard questions, like what do I really want to be doing in a year? And I always had in the back of my mind, traveling, writing is becoming more and more what I want to be doing. And when I like just kind of stopped kidding myself, I was able to dive all in. But yeah, goal setting is huge and definitely something that it does like hone in to what you are. I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Something you said earlier is you said you had all these fears and whatnot for setting them. Where are those fears now?
Honestly, it's been changed a lot since now that I've accepted that this is what I really want to do. I dare to dream and put everything I have into this new lifestyle of going after what I really want. Now I'm able to see the future with as a blank canvas, and I'm really able to create whatever I want. And honestly, it's just like once I changed my mindset and saw my future as that, things are just like happening in our lives. I feel like just naturally, like we're creating this publication together on Medium, where called the Dare to Dream publication now. And for some reason, like in the beginning when I started writing on Medium, I just didn't really think of making my own publication. It's all about submitting your stories into like the big publications. You want to be seen, but at a certain point, like I was sending all these stories into like the top publications, and you wouldn't hear back like 2 weeks, get denied a ton. And like, why don't we just like a week ago, I'm just like, why don't we just make our own, like Dare to Dream? That's what we've been doing here, and it's a place for me and Greg to both document our journey, and it just feels like natural now. And like I'm just so excited to see where that goes, and things just kind of are starting to fall in place when you open up your mind to like what can happen once you stop kidding yourself, pretty much.
One thing that I wanted to say that's been interesting is taking pieces from what you guys both said is, one, the importance of writing goals and the importance of figuring out what you want. And it's easy to say just go sit down and figure out what you want, but in today's society it's actually pretty hard, I think, at least it was for me personally, to figure out what I want, because you have Netflix telling you want one thing, you have movies telling you want another, you have the internet and all of the news saying you need to buy all this stuff. We need external things to fix us. So you have that aspect, and then you have social media that's constantly bombarding you with images of people who look like they have perfect lives, or this new gadget that you need that's going to make you feel more comfortable or be better at X, Y, or Z. And so it's honestly pretty difficult to figure it out what it is that you want with all of these external things impacting us. And I bring this up, I'm trying to take it full circle, because there's one thing that I really do want to hear from you, Tim, and I'll give you a little background on it. So Tim is making this mini series called Devices, and it's and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a mixture of spoken word and music and storytelling. And I'll just let you speak to it. That's probably best.
No, I wanted to adjust what you brought up though.
Yeah.
I think that was a very interesting point about how technology impacts how you decide what it is that you want, because a lot of times we're more focused on our limitations than our opportunities, so that when you remove a limitation, sometimes people are like, oh wait, I haven't thought about it this far, because all this time I had this thing that I was doing that was keeping me from pursuing this arbitrary dream or goal, but now that it's gone, it's okay, what do I do? And so seeing things like algorithms that show you what you've already shown, if you're trying to change, it's just reinforcing old patterns and old behaviors. So that's an insight that I hadn't thought of. But I think that to bring it full circle about Devices is just a series. It might end up being an album, wink wink, and It's just about technology, not just technology, but just a lot of things in our culture I think just aren't set up for us to win. There's a fight for our attention, and it draws you everywhere. And to be successful now more than ever, if you're able to get in flow and you're able to be focused and you're able to prioritize, you can really excel. Because the technology that's there, like things are getting cheaper, things are getting like the tools we have are like even better. Like we just downloaded a free software, DaVinci Resolve. It's really high quality like video editing. But before that would have been like $500 to get in. So like for creatives and people doing what we're doing, it's easier than ever. But at the same time, it's harder to focus than ever. And so I know when you quit your job, you don't have to clock in at this time. You don't have lunch at this time. You don't have deadlines. It's all on you. So even though it's more freedom than ever, you have to be more disciplined than ever. But once you have that, I think sky's the limit.
Totally. So. And I think I really resonate with that because my I just call it like noise. Like there's so much noise telling us what we should be, what we should be doing, what we should be watching, what we should look like. And I'm just trying to simplify as much as possible. Like I know that that's really it's a big part, not partially, why I love writing. It's like this archaic, medium that's been around since the beginning of time, and it's never changed. It's just like an immediate connection between yourself and the outside world. And like I love just like being in nature or just out in the world and just having nothing but my pen and like a book. And that's like all I really need to be happy. I'm like, I don't need all this other stuff, even though society tells you need this stuff. And I don't need all these false aspirations to be happy. I don't like what is success. I know it's something we talk about a lot. Like what are kind of changing our mindset to what success really means to us, and simplifying technology as much as possible in our lives has really helped to focus on what you love and what you want to go after, because then without the noise you can like focus on what's really inside of you and giving that inner voice a voice to come out in the world and kind of see where you go from there.
Sweet.
And now is the time with all of the technological advancements, like you said, Tim. We have access to so much. It really is a double-edged sword, as you said. You can use it to achieve so much more now than we would have been able to years ago. But if you aren't extremely intentional with how you're using technology and how you're using all of these other things that can be quote unquote vices, they can destroy you really quickly. Yeah. And so that's why you sent over your spoken word. You sent over the lyrics, and I think there's so many pieces of that are just really, really bring out the emotion of what is going on for young people these days. All of the distractions and addictions and all of the things out there that are trying to grab our attention. So I don't know if that's something you want to perform. Yeah. Or okay, awesome.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes, I love it.
So, fighting to be focused, multitasking is bogus. This phone that I've been holding, remote control my emotions. Hopeless, nope, it's just gonna be difficult. Flooded with distractions, anhedonia, I'm miserable. Dopamine hits, they happen unpredictable. So we get addicted to scrolling, and it's intentional. Plus, we think it's free, but the fee we pay is attention, minus any suspicion, because we don't pay attention. Our focus is so divided, they're hiding their true intentions, multiplying their business. The news feeds off of tension, misinforming the public with bias disguised as wisdom, confirmation bias supplied by algorithms. Not to mention, just re-downloaded my Tinder, swiping, ooh, match. Now I'm sliding in her mentions, but if they get to tripping, we just start swiping again, because it's hard to be content with all these options. We don't never gotta pick or make decisions, but it's awful cause we hardly make commitments. I'm convinced that we're just products of these products that we're purchasing. I'm honestly addicted to the feeling. Makes me feel like I'm the man, so I'm back at it again, and I'ma really buy my business when you go on my LinkedIn, but I be putting up a front, only show you what I want. I'm self-conscious about my likes sometimes, don't feel like I'm enough, man. I swear I'm just gonna unplug, but I don't. I call my bluff, cause I'm scared of missing out, cause it gives me some connection, plus I'm trying to get more clout, social currency. That's my follower amount. If I'm really cashing out, I get a check on my account that never bounce. I think a lot of us feel the same way deep down. I'm not complaining. I just think we need to change the way that we're thinking about our devices. You ask me how? Sitting on the couch, the time ticks and it talks, but when's the last time you went outside for a walk and left your phone inside, just you, yourself, and your thoughts? Because usually that's when I find that lately I'm feeling lost. On the go, 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 pedal, pedal, never break. Hold up, wait. Have you ever thought to stop and meditate? You don't gotta levitate. Just take a couple minutes, deep breaths to keep your head on straight. To face the day at full tank. Studies show that it's proven to lower angst, and that's what it's gonna take. Because our focus is under attack, and we don't stand a chance if we aren't at full strength.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. A lot of questions about that. When did you get into like rapping? Called spoken word, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little about that.
I mean, when I was really young, and I'll just keep it short, but when I was really young, I had like trouble expressing my emotions, and I would lash out in different ways. And I just found that when I wrote, particularly in rhyme or poems, I was able to express myself, and I felt it wasn't that I need to be heard. I just needed to express myself fully, and I could do that on a page. So regardless if I had someone to talk to, regardless if I knew someone would hear me, I knew that if I articulated it precisely, I could then put it out there. But then being a kid and being a guy, I gotta call it raps. But it's poem, it's poetry. And so my style kind of goes in and out from rap and poems.
Gotcha.
Dang. I have so many things I want to say, so I'm just gonna unload them. First, for those of you listening, I can't believe you just, I don't know if that was 3 minutes, just completely from memory, just perfect cadence. It's amazing that you can not only remember all of that, but just speak it, and like you bring so much emotion and character to it. And I've seen you perform live before, and I think that's one of the things I love most is, okay, there's a lot of things. The first is that the message is so spot on. It's very contemporary, and it's addressing all of these things that we are thinking about but might not be vulnerable enough to say. But then how you say it is the best, because you'll say one line where you're flexing, like you say, you can, like, I'm all about my business, you can check out my LinkedIn. But then like right after that, you like change your tone of voice, and you like talk about how you sometimes feel aren't enough.
Yeah.
And you bring that, it's like multiple people performing, and that is just, it's so cool to listen to. And I really like how you also then you bring it and get introspective and ask those questions. And there's so much to talk about there, but I think it is, to bring it back to what we were talking about with social media, it's like you can put out this figure that looks so confident and so sure of what they're doing, but on the inside you can be scared and have all these doubts and fear.
Totally. Bouncing off that, yeah, it's awesome how it does go from like verse to verse, like the extrovert who's like, this is who I am on social media, and then this is when I feel like the most lost, and inside, like I have these questions like everybody has, and like we're living through the screen and these personas that we put out there, but you know, what are we really feeling, and how do we kind of connect on that inner level of like what should we really be putting out there, because it can be used both ways, like social media and technology, obviously. You know, we're trying to be as vulnerable as possible and show who we really are, and it is a big thing to build a personal brand and show your most authentic self, but it's hard not to get caught up in it. And like, you really want, you know, just as much as you try, everybody wants to like be loved and be accepted on social media, so it's a tough thing for sure, but captured beautifully, my man.
Yeah, I appreciate all that, and that was very insightful for you guys. I like hearing people's impact on it. I try not to describe it myself, because everyone can get something different. But the thing is, it's like, it's so counterintuitive, or not counterintuitive, it's so hypocritical, I guess, because I want to advance that, and I want more people to hear it. Mm-hmm. So where are they going to listen to it? On social media. Right. So I just dropped the first part of the Devices series, and I was on Instagram more than I ever am, because I'm checking, who's commenting, who's seeing it, how was it doing right now, da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, wait, the whole thing is about like how, yeah. And it's so funny, but you have to play the game, right? And I since took a little Instagram break, but then I have to go back and check, because some people hit me up, some people don't have my number, and they're friends I just talk to, or they're out of the country and they use different apps, right? And so it's so interesting how close it is. I don't think we have like a great alternative, and it's like, what's the proper way to integrate social media into your life?
Right.
You know, and especially when you throw on the business part, like, where's this podcast going to be watched, right, online? So I can't tear down social media as this evil thing. It's not. It's not. Especially not during COVID. I've connected with friends. The fact that I know what my high school friends are up to on a daily basis, like, that's cool, perhaps, right?
Totally. And I mean, it's what introduced us. But I think I think if I had to pick like one aspect of your spoken word that I like the most, is that, well, there's two things. One is, I think it's hilarious how you like work in the like, oh, research shows like X, Y, and Z. Like I love that because you studied psychology and you and I are very into personal development and being evidence-based. I loved how you slid that in. And that goes to the other point. It's that you identify the issue, then you talk about how it's affecting you, and then at the end you're saying how to solve it. So you talk about, have you ever gone outside and been on a walk? Have you ever tried to meditate? And you're saying the research shows that it's really beneficial. And I really like and respect that you're doing that. You're not just sitting here talking bad about something and pointing out all the flaws. You're actually spending the time to figure out a solution for it and being an advocate of the positive solution. And then also how you just said that social media isn't all bad. Like we need it to advance what we're trying to do.
Totally. And do you find that when you can, like, how do you really just unplug totally from social media? And when you do you feel like you get like angsty or anything, or do you feel like it is really helpful to your ultimate mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's two parts to that question. One, I think when you stop, especially if you haven't stopped in a while, if you've never stopped, when you realize how often you check your phone, because the app's not there anymore. Normally you check your phone and you open it as impulse, and then suddenly you're in that space. But when you do it, you check your phone, you're like, wait, why did I pick up my phone? Because you don't see the app anymore. So that triggers it, and you're like, wait. And you do that very often. And then you realize after a while, a couple of days, you don't miss it. And not only that, you're actually happier. So one of the things that I mentioned is called anhedonia. And it's a term that not a lot of people know about.
We didn't know what that was.
Yeah,
we were gonna ask you.
Yeah, so anhedonia is the mental state of not being able to derive pleasure from anything. And so recently I've done some research on dopamine. And you know how with alcohol, if you're someone who drinks a lot, you build up a tolerance, so you need to drink more to feel that same buzz. Well, a lot of times dopamine, which is the pleasure or motivation hormone in your brain, actually works the same. You can build up dopamine tolerance. And so the way our society is set up is everything is highly dopamine inducing. Because if I am making an advertisement and I want you to buy my product, I need to make you feel something. And so everything's targeted for that. The way that the social media apps are built are so that you stay on it and you stay constantly stimulated, right? And just the culture, party culture, all that, we're constantly flooding ourselves with dopamine. And so it's the equivalent if you go outside and stare at the sun for several seconds and then go in a dark room and try to look. You can't see what's there, like, because you're overstimulated. It could be beautiful art, but you won't be able to process it even though you're there. And so in the same way, anhedonia will do that to a lot of different things. And the thing is, the behaviors and the habits that lead to long-term success, right, that lead to those long-term delayed gratification are low dopamine inducing. And so what happens is when your tolerance is up here, I'll never feel motivated to read in the morning or to get up at 5, you know what I mean, 5:30, like G, right? And sometimes even exercising, right? But exercising has its own dopamine once you get into it. But it's like, what I've learned to do, to answer the second part of your question, is how do I detach from that? Is I'll have very, very, very boring days, right? And so I'll like just put my phone away a little bit more. I'll just go read. I won't do anything that's really highly stimulating, and just kind of just chill, because then that lowers your tolerance again. And then you'll find that if you're just having a really boring day, then like anything will be stimulation. So read that book or do that thing that you've been putting off, and you'll find you'll actually have more motivation in that. And so that's been a strategy for me. It's called dopamine detox. Yeah. There's a lot of videos out there, and I would encourage people to look into it just to understand it a little bit more.
It's super interesting. And I think it kind of applies to just, you know about Kaizen, it's the Japanese philosophy of getting 1% better every day, as opposed to just total personal development just flipped on its head all at once. Because then it's almost like getting so much dopamine and then getting cut off and then so much and cut off. It's over long term for personal development or for anything. If you want to get better, start small. Start with the details and try to implement it little by little in your life. And maybe these little hits of dopamine, and you know, cutting back a little bit on the like social media and everything every day, and you know, taking things slow basically is what I'm trying to do in my life. Because like you said, I have those days too that seem really boring, but then I'm like, oh, I'm excited to like write this next article tomorrow, and like I get up the next day and I'm fired up again. And so it definitely is a balance of, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, but I think balance is like something I'm really trying to work on in my life much more.
How do you create balance in your life?
I think it's just fostering like a mindset that's Well, first of all, for kind of mindfulness stuff, big walker. I love taking walks every day. I try to get outside and put the phone away, or I'll just like put on airplane mode and listen to a podcast or an audiobook or music a lot too. Love music.
Yeah, the Dream podcast.
Music's important. Listen to the own podcast just over and over. But yeah, big walks and journaling. Like I definitely separate journaling from like my writing, like writing articles and stuff. Like journaling I see as, and I really can't say it enough that I think everybody should journal. It's just like everything that's in my mind I think should just go on the page. Like I'm not trying to create structure or anything. I'm just like letting out what I'm really feeling. Cause like with stories I could like get on myself or like, you know, trying to create a great story and structure and great intro, all that stuff. But like journaling is just like thoughts on the page, and that's just like the ultimate release for me. And that's actually how I started getting into writing. It's like how I felt really connected to it, just through journaling. Those are like journaling, writing, reading, like my big, or writing, walking, and reading, like a big mindfulness kind of just like heavy hitters every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I need to hop in and answer this too, even though you didn't ask me, because balance is one thing that I've struggled with so much. I'm a very binary person. I'm either on or I'm off, and if I decide that I want to try a new diet or a new way of living, it's like I'm starting right now and I'm never going back to the old way. And it works for a month or 2 months, but then I end up burning out because I'm being so extreme about everything. And this past week was tough for me, just as I've mentioned before, starting a business, starting to become a writer and do a podcast. Like there's a lot of ups and downs, and last week for whatever reason I was feeling a little bit more down, and so I started analyzing things that I was doing that were making me unhappy. And one of them was this concept of should. I kept telling myself repeatedly over and over throughout my day, unconsciously, how things should be going. So I woke up and the voice would instantly be there. It'd say, you should have woken up earlier. You should have woken up earlier. And then I'd start reading a book and it would be like, you should be doing this other thing. Like you should have already read 3 books by now. And then I'd go start working on EPOG, and it's just like constantly, this inner voice is telling me how things should be different. And it's so unhelpful because the task at hand, like for EPOG, I was working on something and it was hard. It was like I was having trouble writing this one sentence. And the voice was saying, this should be easier. Why can't you do this better? And that voice, whatever my internal voice says, isn't going to actually change the sentence I write, but it can make me feel a lot worse. And so if I'm constantly throughout the day just thinking like I should do this, I should do that, it takes away from actually being in that present moment and enjoying the activity that I'm doing. Because when you compare what you're currently doing to what you should be doing, if you're doing better than you think you should be doing, you'll feel good. Or you honestly won't even feel that good. You'll just be like, okay, I'm
where it should be.
I'm on par.
Yeah.
But if you're like, dang, I should be over here, but I'm doing way worse, then you feel terrible, and it's a spiraling effect.
Definitely.
So going back to that time, then let's say you were writing that sentence, and that inner critic is being very loud right now and saying you should be better at this. You should be. What do you do then in that situation? Because a lot of our listeners probably have that internal voice too. I've had it. I think it's normal.
Every day.
So what do you do then differently? What do you tell yourself?
Yeah, and so it's really, I'm like 1 week into this. It's just trying to, this sounds counterproductive, but essentially just think less. Just do it. Just write that sentence. Don't think about how it should be compared to whatever preconceived notion you had, and just do it. Like go through an entire day just doing things and not thinking about, not criticizing yourself constantly. And so that's been the big thing for me, is trying to overthink less and just perform more. And not perform in terms of achievement oriented, but just like do tasks.
Just taking the action. That's a good old Nike slogan.
Just
right?
do it.
Sponsor
just
us.
Do it.
But no, is just do it, you know. And I agree. I think there's some wisdom to that too, and just not making it perfect first. And that's something that I've been trying to learn too. Starting an enterprise, starting a whole bunch of new things. Like when you start anything, you're a novice. And the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know. So the crazy thing about growth and progress is like the further along the curve you go, the further you realize you have to go. Right. Because there's higher heights and you aim higher. But I think it's important to acknowledge that. And so sometimes just writing a crappy sentence. Because then now all you have to do is make a crappy sentence better. That's easier than writing a perfect sentence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Writing a crappy sentence is easy, and then making a crappy sentence better is easier than that. So when you break it down into steps like that, I've found for me, it's helpful to just, okay, you know what? I'm getting caught up right here. Let me put something out. Let me learn from it. Let me adjust. Because then I'm reinforcing, okay, boom. And I'm not attaching the outcome to my success. And it has nothing to do with my personal worth. What it is sometimes with music, I've had a lot of songs I've written for years, right? And I think they're really good, but I haven't put them out. And so my thing is, when you put yourself out, especially when it's vulnerable, you feel like you're putting part of yourself out there to be judged. How many likes, how many comments are they going to judge this very intimate thing about me, right? Mm-hmm. But instead, making the success be that I put it out, that I spoke my truth, and that I did my best. And for me, that's taken off so much of the pressure, because I asked myself, okay, was I truthful? Was I honest? Was I authentic to who I am? And did I do my best? I can always control that. I can always control the outcome. But if I'm consistently doing that, the outcome's going to take care of itself.
100%. Couldn't agree more with that. Like, what I've learned in writing so much, just like writing a medium, it's when I feel like I'm about 90% done with the story. Like, I know it could be a little bit better, but I'm like, I've been working on it for like 3 or 4 days. I'm like, I just want to move on. There comes a certain time where I gotta just put it out there. I know I gave it everything I had. I said what I wanted to say, and it feels like me. And it's not my control how people are gonna be affected by it. And a lot of my stories that like I've tailored to these big publications, and I think they're gonna be like huge hits. Yeah. Like the ones that don't do very well, and the ones where it's just like where I enjoyed about the stories I enjoyed writing the most. Where it was like the story about the backpacking trip was like my most successful one. Where it was just like I just loved writing about like the experience, the essence of being out in nature. That's the one that people really connected with the most, because they could. But I assume they felt like it was really me speaking it.
Where can I find that one?
It's all on Medium. It's all on my website too, vincentvanpatten.com.
Okay.
But that one is called "The Stillness of the Forest Brought Clarity to My Soul."
Okay, there you go. Shameless plug. I like that. Wow, yeah, I gotta read it after that title.
There we go. So. But it's all about just starting. Like, I just now initially for like stories, I just throw like whatever thoughts. It's basically like journaling. I just throw everything on the page, and then it's just like editing from there, and it kind of just grows.
It's refined. Yeah.
With everything we do, I think it's huge.
And people can really tell. I like what you said: is be honest, authentic, and truthful, and do your best. People can tell when you're doing that and you're bringing that to the table, versus someone who's almost trying too much. They're trying to do too much and be someone who isn't authentic to them. Mm-hmm. You can really tell just as human beings if someone is coming with a authentic story, and that's really all you can do is just show up and do your best, and then the rest is out of your control. And because the rest is out of your control, like, you better have fun showing up and being yourself.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, that the one thing that being a student athlete has taught me is that like 99% of the time that you spend is practice. Like, we practice, lift, prepare, film, travel. That's the bulk of it. The very slim level is you actually playing the game. And then an even smaller component of that is you winning the game, right? And so just think about it. It's this tiny sliver of winning, and there's all this of process. And so that's why you hear cliches like trust the process, you gotta love the process. Mm-hmm. But think about it away from the cliche. You're saying, okay, where am I spending my time, right? If I'm only gonna allow myself to feel happiness when we win for a brief moment, because you have another game 2 days later, you only experience this much of the happiness, right? And so if you're loathing the process, then that's gonna impact the outcome. But if you learn, okay, to love it in practice, you know what, okay, I got a goal, I'm gonna work super hard, I'm gonna be enthusiastic, I'm gonna cheer up my teammates, because when you cheer others up, you actually get more energy. Mm-hmm. And when you make it in the process, then this whole thing, regardless of the outcome, is now where you're deriving the pleasure from, right? That's kind of where I got the name EPOG from, the enjoyable pain of growth. Learning to embrace that growth process, the painful part, it came from my sports background. But then you have the wins and losses. What happens is when you're loving this and you're going hard in this, you're actually going to increase the amount of wins that you have anyways.
Exactly. And you look at all the top athletes, and it's all about the process. Like, I think I talked about this in the first podcast, but David Goggins, just an animal. You could go over his accolades and whatnot, but he basically, one of them was he set the world record for pull-ups, and he was just saying, like, he did it like 4 times. He did like 5,000 pull-ups or something in like a day, and he had to do it like 4 times. But like once he actually achieved it, it didn't even really matter to him. He could really care less. He was just looking to already the next accomplishment that he was going to go for, because he loved more than anything And what just changed his life was the process of getting better, because he took so much out of him to become who he wanted to be, and it was such an incredible process that he is somebody who cherishes the process more than anything.
Yeah, the one thing that's interesting that you brought up, I actually randomly found a David Goggins clip on Instagram yesterday, so it's not all bad, right? But then also like the fact that he did like those 17,000 pull-ups and then moved on right away. A lot of people were like, "Whoa, hey, let yourself feel happy," but that's what he's doing.
Yeah,
the pursuing the next thing is what makes him happy. It's the process of a goal, and then bringing in psychology too. Like your brain produces dopamine when it realizes that you are progressing towards a goal, not necessarily when you attain it. When you attain it, you get a quick burst. That's it. But what it is as you notice you're getting closer, your brain's like, oh, we're getting there, and you actually start to enjoy it more. That's when you get momentum. So actually, it makes sense. You actually experience more pleasure when you have that goal. That's why it's good to have like a big overarching goal, so you always have that process, and then have benchmarks so that you know that you're getting there. And that's the kind of the practicality behind goal setting. I think a lot of people just think it's like, it's cool, some people do that. It's like you actually experience more pleasure, neurologically speaking, if you set it up like this, and that's the way that you're perceiving what you're doing.
Yeah, and having a goal, it doesn't necessarily need to be something you achieve. You should set big goals that are so audacious that you might not achieve them, but it gives you a direction to work towards. It gives you, it can be your guiding light almost as you become a better version of yourself. You're moving in that direction. And I really like what you said about how like when you achieve your goal, you might have that instant hit of dopamine. You might feel good for a couple of days, but then immediately once you achieve that goal, you're going to set a new goal. It's called goal posting. So you're not happy for very long, because once you get that thing, you set your sights on something else that you need or want. And then if you don't feel happy until you get there again, you're just going to have these brief hits of happiness. Versus if you can shift the whole process of working towards that goal as the part that brings you happiness, then you're going to have it all the time.
Yeah. And it also takes failure out of the equation too. Because if you're like, okay, all of my success is based on who I'm becoming, did I tell the truth, and did I do my best? It's okay to feel upset, because if you don't, but you're only upset if you don't do one of those things. If I wasn't authentic, if I kind of like try to make myself sound a little bit more impressive than I actually am, right? Or if I could have done better, right? Then a lot of times you could be successful, but not having done your best. That's not a good recipe either,
right?
You know, because a lot of times winning can be detrimental, right? Because we think, oh yeah, we got this. But as long as you got these three things, that's best. And then if you fail, it doesn't matter, because okay, did I do these three things? So it takes all the anxiety away from like winning and losing, and winning won't make you soft and losing won't make you bitter, right? It's just like, okay, what did I do? Like, and just having something external from the process actually like affords you the space to fail.
I love that. Totally. And that's just like, you know, for everybody listening, that enjoy the process of trying to find what you're passionate about, because it's like when you find it, you found it. I mean, it's a lifelong pursuit of finding what you're passionate about, finding what you really love, but enjoy the time to question who you are, and to think deeply, and to really simplify your life to try to figure out what you ultimately want to do and what brings you the ultimate happiness. And I found that's really being your most authentic self. Like, I think you guys definitely agree with that. Like, that's what makes us truly happy, is knowing that we are doing what we are, giving everything we have, that is, you know, that we feel is who we really are. That's what brings us happiness. And to take the pressure off yourself, like, that's huge. We put so much pressure on ourselves that we have to find our life's purpose. Take the pressure off and really just try to think about it more with an open mind. And sometimes it's what you never could have imagined comes in your life, and that's what takes you on this entirely different route. So take the pressure off, and, you know, be open to all that could happen.
That's something that I need to tell myself every day, is take the pressure off. And what's really helped with you and I, Tim, working on EPOG, is that we had that conversation about how no matter what happens, it's all positive. No matter the outcome, we are successful already, because we had the courage to declare this big dream we wanted, and we also are having the courage to work on it every single day. And so no matter what happens to EPOG Academy, us becoming better because we're working and learning all of these new skills, we're successful already. That takes a lot of the pressure off. And if that's something that I need to tell myself constantly, and that I think, especially in our society with all with all of these demands on us is just be nicer to yourself, be easier on yourself.
Do you think that having some anxiety or some negative emotion associated with not achieving what you set out is ever positive, or do you think that that's something that we need to remove from the equation to lower the bar of fear to start things? Or do you feel like, how do you handle the both?
That is a great question, and I think fear is good. Like we talked about this like in the last podcast. I think that fear is a motivator. Fear drives us, and it's often when we're the most scared is when we know that's what we're supposed to do. You're about to perform on stage, and you're scared, but you're more excited than anything. And so I think fear can be a motivator, but ultimately realizing that what doesn't kill you will make you stronger, that you will get through anything. And so kind of using the fear to your advantage, that makes sense.
I might actually take a different answer it in a different way, because for me, I normally perform better when I'm doing something without this fear or pressure. And while having the fear or pressure or this like external demand is a good motivator, and it'll help me get the job done, my highest quality of work comes when I'm coming from a place of playfulness and I'm in a flow state. And so I guess maybe that's how I'd answer the question is, if you just want me to get things done, then fear and a lot of pressure and external deadlines are really good. Like I can achieve a ton with that. But if I want to produce my highest quality of work, something that is the most honest and authentic and feels, it really captures the essence of what I was trying to do, that comes when I'm in a much happier state of mind. And at the end of the day, I mean, you can't take it with you. We've talked about this before. All you can do throughout your life is try your best, be honest, and hopefully make other people's lives more positive and have an impact. So why not try and achieve all of those things from a place of self-love and a place where you're actually enjoying the process versus just checking the box day after day, getting things done? Because at the end of the day, like, are you going to look back and be proud of all those check boxes that you filled out? Or are you going to look back on all of the times where you found flow and loved yourself and had fun with that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely key, especially what you were saying, because when you're happy, you actually do your best work.
Yeah. And
that's actually true. The field of positive psychology, you're actually more creative. Your brain processes things faster when you're actually in a happy state. So I definitely see that component to it. I think about that sometimes because we do have a fear of failure, and a lot of times, as a result of that fear of failure, people are like, don't fear failure. That's not making sense. But what it is a lot of times, even from that same vein, we act like failure doesn't exist out of fear of it, and we'll do it in the name of don't fear failure, or we'll just say, oh, it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? But I think that understanding that this life thing is fatal. This life thing is dangerous, but you're up for the challenge. It's kind of how I try to perceive things, because I think a lot of times if we ignore the fact that you can fail and things can go very wrong, if we ignore that, there's an element of it that's not real that I think resonates with people. But not to discourage people. It's like you're capable of way more than you think you are. So that's like holding those two for me is how I help balance.
Yeah. All right. So we covered so many amazing topics today. And what I just wanted to say, first of all, is thank you, Tim, for being here. And I always love having these conversations with you, because not only do you bring the anecdotal evidence, you're an amazing storyteller, but you have that psychology mind where you're always, dropping in the little bits of research, and you're always coming to the table with a solution, which I really appreciate. It's not just complaining or identifying, it's here's the things you can do to better yourself in that way. And so thank you again for being on the podcast. And I would just love if you could tell people where they can learn more about you, more about your spoken word, more about your music, more about everything it is that you're doing.
Well, first of all, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome. I really believe in what you guys are doing, and I admire you guys having the courage to take that leap. And so to be part of it as I'm joining this journey too is like, it only makes sense. So as far as like my personal brand stuff, just find me on Instagram, Timothy_John_. SoundCloud, Timothyjohn, and LinkedIn, Timothyjohn Harrison, full name. So here we go.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. That's going to do it for episode 4. We'll see you next time.
It's good.